In this second half of section 6.5, we are going to look at the relationship between perpendicular lines. So if you recall from middle school, perpendicular lines are lines that intersect at a 90-degree angle. So they basically make a perfect corner. When we are looking at that from an algebraic standpoint, we're going to again be looking at the relationship between their slopes. So the two lines that are graphed on the coordinate plane, the red line and the blue line, are perpendicular to one another. The equation of the red line is this top equation here, and it has a slope of negative 1/4. The blue line, the equation of that one is here, has a slope of positive 4. So the relationship there is that the slopes of perpendicular lines are opposite reciprocals of one another. So in other words, when we know the slope of one line, a line that's perpendicular to it will have a slope that is the opposite sign, so one positive, one negative, and reciprocal means we take that fraction and flip it over. So for negative 1/4, I made it positive, and then I flipped 1/4 over to get 4/1. So here are some examples of opposite or sometimes called negative reciprocals of one another. So when you're dealing with those, you always have to think about, again, changing the sign and flipping a fraction over. So 4 and negative 1/4, 2/3 and negative 3/2, and negative 1/9 and positive 9/1. All of those would have opposite reciprocal or negative reciprocal relationships, meaning that lines with these slopes would be perpendicular. So now we're just going to practice finding the opposite or negative reciprocal. So for this first one, example A, I have a slope of negative 5/3. So the opposite reciprocal of that means it would be positive, and then I'm going to flip that fraction over. So I would have positive 3/5. As I move over here to question number 2, I have negative 2. So it's important to remember when you have a whole number that that technically has a denominator of 1. So negative 2 is the same as negative 2/1. So if I change the sign, so it's going to be positive, and then I flip that fraction over, I would have positive 1/2. Moving over to C, on part C I have 11, which again would be a situation where it technically has a denominator of 1. So if I change the sign, then that is going to become negative. And then if I flip that fraction over, I will have 1/11. And then finally over here on D, I have positive 1/7. So I know that its negative reciprocal is going to be negative then. And then when I flip over 1/7, it becomes 7/1, which I can actually just write as 7. So now let's look at an example where we're trying to write the equation of a line. So it wants us to find an equation of a line that contains, so if you remember from yesterday's lesson, that means it goes through the point 0, -2, and is perpendicular to this line that's described here, y equals 5x plus 3. So this line has a slope of positive 5. So if I want a line that is perpendicular to that, I want the opposite reciprocal of 5. So the opposite reciprocal of positive 5 would be negative 1/5. So the line that I'm trying to write the equation of has a slope of negative 1/5 and goes through the point 0, -2. So that means I have the correct information to be able to write the equation of the line in point-slope form. I know a point on the line and a slope of the line. So this would become y minus a -2 would become +2, equals m, so that's slope, negative 1/5, times the quantity, x minus 0. So now if I rewrite that equation into slope-intercept form, I'm going to distribute negative 1/5 over here. So y plus 2 equals negative 1/5 x, and then negative 1/5 times 0 would just be 0. Anything times 0 is 0. And then to get y by itself, I need to subtract 2. So I have to do that on both sides of the equation, meaning that these will cancel out. And I can say that y equals negative 1/5 x minus 2. So if I graphed it, this equation that I just wrote, this line would be perpendicular to the line that we were given in the problem, y equals 5x plus 3. So in this next example, we are being asked to do the exact same thing. So we have a line that goes through the point 1, 8 and is perpendicular to y equals 3/4 x plus 1. So if it's perpendicular to the line that's described here, then the slope is going to be the opposite reciprocal of the slope of this line. So this line has a slope of 3/4. So the opposite reciprocal of 3/4 would be negative 4/3. And then I know that it goes through this point, 1, 8. So again, we have the correct information to be writing the equation of our line in point slope form. So here's point slope again. So in this case, that would become y minus 8 equals slope, so negative 4/3 times the quantity x minus 1. So to get that into slope-intercept form, I'm going to distribute negative 4/3. So y minus 8 equals negative 4/3 x. And then negative 4/3 times negative 1 would become a positive 4/3. So then my final step here would be to get y by itself by adding 8 to both sides, meaning that these will cancel out. And I can say that y is equal to negative 4/3 x and then 4/3 plus 8. So you can do that on your calculator if you want to, and your calculator will either give you 28/3, or that would be the same as writing y equals negative 4/3 x plus 9 1/3. So both of those are fine. It's not a right or a wrong. Those mean the same thing, but they're both right answers.